AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family feud. I, 34F, have had a complicated relationship with my family for most of my adult life, especially with my sister, Emily, 36F. We were close growing up, but things started to change around 10 years ago when our parents divorced. I stayed mostly out of the conflict, trying to maintain neutrality, but Emily resented me for what she perceived as siding with our father. The rift escalated, and eventually we stopped talking altogether. Over the years, I've had minimal contact with my parents and Emily. I moved to another city, built my own life, and focused on my career. Despite some efforts on my part to reach out, Emily never responded positively, and our attempts at reconciliation were met with hostility. It was painful, but I reached a point where I accepted that our relationship might never return to what it once was. Recently, Emily announced her engagement. I received a formal invitation to the wedding, and initially, I felt a twinge of hope. Maybe attending would be a way to mend fences. I spent several weeks wrestling with the decision. On one hand, I wanted to support her, and I wanted to show that I wasn't holding grudges. On the other hand, I remembered all the hurtful things she said and did during our fallout. Attending her wedding felt like pretending none of that had happened, which I wasn't ready to do. I decided to call her instead of just sending a decline. During the call, I told her how much I valued the past we had shared and how I wanted her to have a wonderful wedding, but I couldn't attend due to our unresolved issues. I explained that showing up would feel disingenuous given our history. Her response shocked me. She accused me of holding on to anger and being selfish. She said I was prioritizing a stupid grudge over family and accused me of ruining the family dynamic. I tried to explain that I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I just couldn't ignore the decade-long estrangement. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me. After that, my parents reached out. They told me that Emily was devastated by my refusal and implied that I was being unreasonable. They reminded me that weddings are about family and suggested that my absence would create a permanent rift. I understand their perspective, but I also feel that forcing myself into a situation where I don't feel emotionally safe isn't healthy. My friends have mixed opinions. Some say I should just go to make peace and avoid future regret, while others think my boundaries are valid and that attending would be emotionally damaging. I've also considered that attending might allow me to see other relatives I'm close to, but the thought of interacting with Emily in a highly charged environment fills me with anxiety. I'm not sure I could handle pretending everything is okay while being confronted with her anger or passive-aggressive remarks in front of all the guests. I've tried to imagine different scenarios. One option was to attend the wedding, but keep my distance from Emily, perhaps leaving early or limiting interactions. But the thought of standing at the same room as her, smiling and congratulating her, while suppressing all the resentment and hurt I've carried for years, feels exhausting. Another option was to attend virtually or send a heartfelt gift. I've settled on sending a sincere letter with a gift, expressing my hope for her happiness without attending. I hope this shows that I'm not indifferent, but also preserves my emotional well-being. I know people may see this as me being petty or holding on to the past, but it's not about winning or punishing anyone. I simply don't have the emotional bandwidth to face her in such an intimate and public setting. I've spent years trying to protect myself from repeated emotional harm, and while I wish things were different, I cannot justify putting myself in a situation that feels harmful just to appease social expectations. The most complicated part is knowing that my absence will hurt other family members who have nothing to do with our feud. My younger cousins, who I've always been close to, will likely feel disappointed, and I feel guilty about that. But I've realized that my presence isn't a guarantee of fixing anything. It may actually cause tension if my discomfort becomes visible. I've tried reaching out to Emily one more time, suggesting that we meet privately before or after the wedding, but she has refused, insisting that the only acceptable resolution is me attending the ceremony. I feel trapped between my desire to maintain boundaries and the societal expectation that family obligations trump personal well-being. I'm sharing this because I genuinely don't know if I'm being unreasonable. I want to honor my feelings and protect my mental health, but I also don't want to be remembered as the mean sibling who didn't show up on one of the most important days of my sister's life. I've wrestled with guilt, fear, and doubt. Part of me wants to put aside my pride and attend, but another part knows I would leave feeling resentful and emotionally drained. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding due to a decade-long unresolved family feud. Even though I've tried to maintain some form of connection and express my support from afar, I feel like I'm caught in a situation where any choice I make could be perceived as selfish or wrong, and I need an outside perspective on whether my decision is truly unreasonable or if protecting my mental health is a valid choice. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious. When do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to give my sister the apartment she wants after she manipulated me. AITA for refusing to let my sister move into my apartment after she tried to manipulate me emotionally. This has been ongoing for a few months, and it's gotten really messy. I want to share the full story and see if I'm overreacting. I, 28F, live in a moderately sized city and have been renting an apartment on my own for about 3 years. I really like my place. It's cozy, has a small balcony, and I've put a lot of effort into decorating it, so it feels like home. I pay all the bills, and the rent is manageable for me. My sister, Emily, 26F, recently moved back to the city after living abroad for a few years. She doesn't have a stable job yet. She's been freelancing, but her income is unpredictable. When she returned, she immediately mentioned that she was looking for a place to live, and she asked if she could stay with me temporarily. I agreed to let her stay for a couple of weeks while she looked for her own apartment because I wanted to help. During those weeks, everything was fine, and we even had fun catching up. Then, after about a week, Emily started dropping hints that she loved my apartment and that it would be perfect for her permanently. She told me she couldn't afford most places in the city and subtly suggested that I wouldn't mind if she stayed. I said I needed my space and that this was only temporary. She seemed a little hurt, but agreed to keep looking. A few days later, she started leaving more direct messages and calls. She'd say things like, "You've always been generous. Wouldn't hurt to let me stay a little longer." Or, I'd never ask if it weren't important." She even hinted that if I didn't let her stay, she might have to move back to her old town, which she made sound like a huge inconvenience and emotionally manipulative. I started feeling guilty because she kept framing it as if I was being selfish, even though I was just trying to maintain my independence. One evening, she showed up at my apartment unexpectedly, holding a bottle of wine, and said we should talk seriously about her staying. She argued that it would be practical for both of us. She could pay part of the rent, help with chores, and I would never have to be alone. I told her that while I appreciated her offer, I really preferred living alone. She started crying, saying that nobody else in the city would help her the way I was helping, and that I was being unfair. I felt cornered, but I didn't want to give in. I tried to calm her down and said I could help her look for other apartments. Over the next month, she kept trying different tactics. She would send long texts about how she had no place to go, how unfair it was that she was struggling while I was comfortable, and sometimes even passive-aggressive messages like, "I guess some people just don't care about family." She also mentioned that she had friends with larger apartments who might let her crash, but they don't understand her like I do. It became exhausting to constantly defend my decision, and I started feeling anxious whenever my phone rang. I finally drew a firm line. I told her that I would not be letting her move in permanently, that she needed to find her own place, and that the temporary stay was over. She responded angrily, accusing me of being heartless and selfish. She even started posting subtle things on social media, like pictures of her empty apartment search and captions that seemed directed at me, implying I wasn't a supportive sister. To complicate things further, my parents got involved. They called me to ask why I wasn't helping Emily more and suggested that I was being unkind. I explained that I was supporting her by giving her a temporary place and helping her search, but she was pushing boundaries and manipulating me emotionally. My parents seemed sympathetic to her, but eventually backed off after I insisted I was not willing to compromise my living situation. Emily now refuses to speak to me and occasionally sends mutual friends messages implying that I am selfish and don't care about family. I feel guilty sometimes because I know she is struggling, but I also feel relieved because my home finally feels like my own again. A few friends have told me that I'm not the asshole for wanting to live alone, but others have said I should have been more accommodating. I honestly don't know. I feel like Emily crossed boundaries and manipulated me, but at the same time, she is my sister and is going through a hard time. Am I the asshole for refusing to let her move in permanently? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a decade-long family feud? I, 32F, have had a complicated relationship with my family for most of my adult life. To give some background, I grew up in a pretty small town with my parents and two siblings. My older sister, Clara, 36F, and my younger brother, Ben, 28M. Our family has always been tight-knit in public, but behind closed doors, things were far from perfect. My parents were emotionally distant, especially my mother, who had a tendency to favor Clara in almost every way. From childhood through adulthood, Clara received constant praise, support, and even financial help that I never did. The major turning point came about 10 years ago. I had just graduated college and was living at home while trying to get my career off the ground. At the time, Clara had just gotten engaged to her now husband, and my parents were throwing themselves into wedding planning. One afternoon, I accidentally overheard my mother on the phone, complaining to a friend that I was too dramatic and always causing problems because I had asked her for advice about budgeting for my rent. I confronted her about it, and instead of apologizing, she called me ungrateful and compared me unfavorably to Clara, saying I could never do anything right. This escalated into a huge argument, and I left home that day, furious and heartbroken. Over the next few years, I tried to reconcile. I sent birthday cards, checked in occasionally, and even invited my parents to events in my life, but every attempt was met with dismissiveness or passive-aggressive comments. Eventually, I stopped trying. I moved to a different city for work and made a conscious decision to limit contact with my family. I maintained only a casual relationship with Ben, who lives across the country, and avoided all direct communication with my parents and Clara. Fast forward to last month. I received a wedding invitation from Clara. The envelope was formal, but the message inside seemed more like a guilt trip than an actual invitation. It read something along the lines of, "Despite our differences, we hope you can make it to our special day. Family wouldn't be complete without you." I was conflicted. Part of me wanted to go to show that I could rise above past grievances, but another part remembered every dismissive comment, every instance where my feelings were invalidated. I decided to talk to Ben about it. He told me he'd be attending and encouraged me to go, saying it would mean a lot to Clara. I hesitated, feeling pressured, but also knowing he was coming from a place of love. Then, last week, I called my mother to let her know I wouldn't be attending. I expected some resistance, but the reaction I got was worse than I anticipated. She started yelling, telling me that I was selfish, that I was letting petty grudges ruin family celebrations, and that Clara had begged her to make sure I came. She even mentioned that my absence would be a huge embarrassment to Clara in front of her new in-laws. I tried to explain that my decision wasn't about embarrassing anyone, but about protecting my mental health and boundaries. She hung up. Since then, I've received multiple texts from Clara and my parents, each more guilt-laden than the last. Clara's messages were particularly manipulative. She called me the sister who could never be happy for me and said, "I can't imagine getting married without you there, but I guess you don't care about family." My father's messages were subtler but still frustrating. They implied that I was choosing a path of loneliness and that my resentment was poisoning the family. Here's the thing, I don't feel guilty. My absence is not about Clara's wedding specifically. It's about 10 years of feeling unseen, unsupported, and dismissed. I have attended other family events when I felt able, but this one feels like the culmination of everything that went wrong. My mental health has improved significantly since I cut ties with toxic dynamics, and I know attending this wedding would compromise that. Despite that, several mutual friends who know both sides have started weighing in. Some say I'm overreacting and that I should just go for a few hours to keep peace. Others say my parents are manipulative and that my decision is valid. It's confusing because I do care about Clara, but the way she treated me over the years, particularly how she allowed our mother to diminish me repeatedly, makes me feel like my presence would be more about performing forgiveness than actually feeling it. I've tried to compromise in other ways. I sent Clara a heartfelt letter congratulating her, explaining my absence, and wishing her happiness. I even offered to celebrate privately with her at a later date. She acknowledged the letter, but never responded directly, only sending a vague thanks in a text that felt dismissive. Now, I'm getting mixed messages from my social circle. Some friends tell me that family events are worth enduring discomfort for, while others tell me that prioritizing my mental health is more important than anyone else's expectations. I've also been accused of being dramatic and holding grudges, which triggers me because that language mirrors what my mother said 10 years ago. I want to make it clear, I'm not trying to punish Clara or my parents. I genuinely wish them happiness and hope her wedding goes beautifully. I just can't participate without compromising my own boundaries and self-respect. But every day since sending my RSVP decline, I've been second-guessing myself, wondering if I'm the bad person here. Am I? So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of family tension, despite her insistence and my parents' disapproval. I'm trying to balance my mental health with familial obligations, and I honestly don't know if I'm being reasonable or unnecessarily harsh. AITA for refusing to attend my cousin's wedding after what happened last Christmas. Last Christmas, my extended family gathered at my aunt and uncle's house, as we usually do. This year, my cousin Sarah, who is getting married this spring, decided to host a sort of pre-wedding family gathering. I was excited because I hadn't seen some of my relatives in a long time, and it seemed like a good opportunity to catch up. I also wanted to spend some time with my younger cousins, who I adore. I didn't anticipate that the evening would end in a huge argument that has now left me questioning whether I even want to be part of the wedding at all. I'll start with some context. I, 28F, have always been more introverted and private than my family. I enjoy spending time with them, but I often feel drained by large gatherings, especially when alcohol is involved. Sarah, 26F, and I have always had a complicated relationship. We were close as children, but as we grew older, our personalities diverged. She's extremely social and sometimes manipulative without realizing it, while I tend to avoid confrontation and prefer calm environments. My family tends to favor Sarah's perspective in conflicts because she is charismatic and persuasive, which has always frustrated me. At the gathering, I brought my boyfriend, Jason, 30M. Jason is generally reserved, but he's warm once he gets to know people. Things were fine at first. We exchanged gifts, ate dinner, and participated in the usual games. Then Sarah brought up a family tradition of reading aloud a Christmas story in which each family member shares something they're grateful for. I thought this was harmless enough. However, when it came my turn, I said I was grateful for having supportive friends, good health, and the ability to pursue my career. I did not mention my extended family, mostly because I was feeling tense and didn't want to enter into the usual competitive gratitude thing they do every year. Sarah's reaction was immediate and dramatic. She said it was hurtful that I didn't include family in my list and implied that I didn't care about anyone in the room. My uncle jumped in and told me I was being selfish and ungrateful, while my aunt gave me a look that clearly said I'd crossed a line. I tried to explain that I do care about them, but that I was feeling overwhelmed, and my list was genuinely about what I appreciated most this year. This seemed to make things worse rather than better. My uncle insisted that if I truly valued family, I would have prioritized them in my gratitude. At this point, I was near tears because the whole room had turned against me, and Jason quietly tried to support me, but even he looked uncomfortable. Things escalated further when Sarah decided to teach me a lesson. She made a joke about me being cold and unloving in front of everyone, which turned into everyone laughing at my expense. I asked her privately afterward to stop, but she shrugged and said, "It's Christmas, lighten up." By the end of the night, I left early, feeling humiliated. I tried to talk to my parents about it afterward, and they said I was overreacting and that Sarah didn't mean anything by it. I felt completely unsupported, and it reinforced my sense that my perspective didn't matter in this family dynamic. Fast forward a few months, and Sarah's wedding is approaching. Invitations were sent out, and my family expects me to attend. I looked at the guest list and realized that most of the people who humiliated me at Christmas will be there. I also remember how Sarah had publicly mocked me and how no one had taken my side. I started feeling anxious about attending. I considered going for the sake of maintaining appearances, but the thought of walking into that environment filled me with dread. I don't want to be in a situation where I am ridiculed again, or where my discomfort is minimized or dismissed. Last week, I told my parents I was thinking of skipping the wedding. My mother immediately said that this would be disrespectful and that I would break Sarah's heart. My father was more neutral, but suggested I should at least try to be gracious. I explained that I was worried about how I would be treated and that I didn't feel safe emotionally around certain family members. I also mentioned that attending under duress would only worsen my anxiety and could lead to a confrontation. My parents sighed and said I was being too sensitive. I then reached out to Sarah directly, hoping that a private conversation could smooth things over. I told her I was hurt by what happened last Christmas and that I was not sure I could attend the wedding unless we had a chance to talk through it. Her response was surprising. She accused me of holding grudges for no reason and said that I was being dramatic. She also said that if I didn't attend, it would be a huge disappointment to her and the family, which felt like an attempt to guilt me. At this point, I felt cornered. I don't want to ruin my relationship with my cousins entirely, but I also can't ignore how hurt I was and how unsupported I felt. I have a history of anxiety and social stress, and I'm concerned that attending the wedding would be emotionally damaging for me. I considered going only for the ceremony and skipping the reception, but I know that would still feel uncomfortable because Sarah seems to expect me to participate fully. I've shared my dilemma with a few close friends, and they are split. Some say I should go to avoid family drama, while others say my feelings are valid and that it's reasonable to skip events that are harmful to my mental health. I also worry that skipping the wedding will mark me as the bad cousin forever, which is partly why I'm hesitant. I'm now seriously considering sending a polite but firm RSVP decline, explaining that I am prioritizing my mental health and hope to celebrate with Sarah another time in a smaller, more personal setting. So, AITA for considering not attending my cousin's wedding because of how I was treated at last Christmas's family gathering. I feel like my feelings are justified, but part of me worries that I am overreacting and letting past grievances dictate my future actions. Has anyone here dealt with a similar family dynamic? I'm torn between maintaining family appearances and protecting my own well-being, and I honestly don't know which choice is truly right. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering a family secret. I, 28F, have always been close to my family, especially my younger sister, Mia, 25F. Growing up, our parents were very involved in our lives, sometimes a bit overbearing, but I always felt loved and supported. Mia and I shared everything from school drama to college dilemmas. And even now, as adults, we try to maintain a strong bond despite living in different cities. Recently, however, something happened that has made me question whether attending her wedding is even possible. Mia got engaged to her boyfriend, Luke, 27M, about 8 months ago. I met him a few times, and while we didn't instantly click, I didn't have any major issues with him. When she asked me to be a bridesmaid, I was thrilled and immediately said yes. We started planning the usual pre-wedding events, dress fittings, bridal showers, and even a weekend getaway with a bridal party. Everything was going smoothly until about 3 weeks ago. One evening, I was visiting my parents' house for dinner. After we finished eating, my dad pulled me aside and asked me to keep what he was about to tell me a secret. He seemed nervous and fidgety, which immediately made me uneasy. My mom, who was standing nearby, just nodded and looked sad. My dad then told me something that completely stunned me. Luke is actually my half-brother. At first, I thought he was joking or exaggerating, but he insisted he was serious. He explained that before my parents married, My dad had a brief relationship with a woman he never told anyone about. Luke was the product of that relationship. My dad didn't know how to approach the situation, but apparently he confirmed it with a DNA test a few months ago and decided to tell me because the wedding was approaching. He said he and my mom thought it would be better if I knew first before anyone else in the family did. I felt sick. My first thought was to confront Luke, but I didn't know how to even begin that conversation. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't eat, sleep, or focus on work. I tried talking to my sister about it, but it was impossible without spilling the secret in front of her. I was terrified that just mentioning the tension would clue her in before I was ready. I also struggled with what this meant legally and ethically. Would attending the wedding be considered incest? Would I be putting myself in danger of emotional trauma? I eventually decided I couldn't just stay silent. I called my parents and asked them why they hadn't told me sooner. My dad said he didn't want to ruin Mia's happiness or create drama before the wedding. My mom added that they hoped maybe the relationship wouldn't go further and that the engagement might not result in marriage, but clearly they were wrong. After several sleepless nights, I made a decision. I could not attend Mia's wedding. I felt that seeing Luke in a wedding dress/tuxedo with my sister while knowing the truth would be unbearable. I called Mia and tried to explain without revealing Luke's true identity. I told her I had personal reasons for stepping back and that it had nothing to do with her, and I offered to help with planning in other ways like coordinating decorations, helping with invites, or hosting a pre-wedding brunch. Mia was devastated. She kept asking if I hated Luke or had some other issue with him, and I had to lie to protect both the secret and my emotional well-being. Our parents are furious with me. They say I'm being dramatic and selfish, that I should put my sister's happiness above my own discomfort, and that refusing to attend will cause more family tension than the secret itself. My dad even suggested maybe I could just stay in the corner and smile during the ceremony, but I know I couldn't handle it. I reached out to a close friend who is a therapist, and she advised me that my feelings are valid and that attending could be extremely traumatic. She suggested setting boundaries and prioritizing my mental health, even if it conflicts with family expectations. I feel like I have no good options: attend and risk immense emotional distress, or skip the wedding and potentially alienate my sister and parents. I've thought about writing a letter to Mia explaining that I love her and support her, but cannot attend due to deeply personal reasons. I worry, though, that she will suspect something and be hurt that I didn't confide in her. My parents keep pressuring me, and it feels like they're choosing Mia's happiness over my well-being. I don't know how to navigate this without causing lasting damage to my relationship with my sister or making everyone in the family resent me. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after discovering that her fiancé is actually my half-brother. I feel trapped between protecting myself and maintaining family bonds, and I honestly don't know what the right choice is. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after what happened last year. Last year, my younger sister, Emily, got engaged to her now fiancé, Mark. Initially, I was thrilled for her. We've always been close despite our age difference. I even helped her plan parts of the engagement party and gave her advice on venues and catering. Things were going smoothly until her fiancé's family started getting involved in ways I didn't expect. Mark's mother, Linda, is a very controlling person. She has this idea that weddings should be perfect down to the tiniest detail, and she's not shy about letting people know her opinions. At first, it was just minor things. She wanted a specific type of flowers, a particular seating arrangement, and she insisted on using her cousin's bakery for the cake. My sister and I tried to compromise, but Linda made it clear that nothing could be too perfect for her son's big day. The engagement party was when things started to really spiral. Linda had invited a lot of distant relatives I had never met and began dictating how the party should run. She kept criticizing the decorations, the music, even the way the food was served. I tried to stay calm and help my sister, but it was exhausting. At one point, Linda actually yelled at one of the waitstaff because they didn't arrange the hors d'oeuvres in the order she wanted. I could see Emily getting stressed, and I tried to step in diplomatically, but Linda basically ignored me and kept complaining. I didn't say anything at the time, but I felt like my input, as the bride's sister, was completely dismissed. I had spent weeks helping plan, and yet I was treated as if I had no right to have opinions. I voiced my frustration quietly to Emily, but she was too worried about upsetting her fiancé's mother to do anything. Fast forward to the wedding itself. I had been helping with some DIY projects for the decor, and I noticed that Linda had secretly removed a lot of things I had put effort into. The seating chart had been completely changed to accommodate her relatives. I try not to take it personally, but it hurt seeing my work disregarded. On the day of the ceremony, things got worse. Linda had apparently instructed some of the wedding staff to keep me away from certain parts of the day, including the bridal suite where the wedding party was getting ready. I was told I couldn't go in because it was too crowded, but there was plenty of space. Later, my sister told me Linda had explicitly said she didn't want me there. I felt humiliated. This was supposed to be my sister's big day, and I was treated like an unwelcome guest in her own family's wedding. During the reception, Linda went on a long speech about family unity and respecting her son's wishes, and I realized she was indirectly referring to me. She complained that some people in the family were causing unnecessary drama, and I knew she meant me. It was incredibly awkward. I tried to stay polite, but by the end of the night, I was so angry that I left early, and I didn't talk to Emily or Mark for several days. After the wedding, Emily and I had a long talk. She said she felt stuck between her fiancé and me and didn't know how to stand up to his mother. I was sympathetic, but also frustrated. I told her that I felt disrespected and that I needed some space to process everything. We didn't argue, but there was a clear distance between us that had never existed before. Now, almost a year later, Emily is getting married again. Yes, she's marrying Mark again. Apparently, they had some personal issues to work through and decided to have a smaller, more private ceremony this time. She invited me early, but I've been hesitant. When we talked about the guest list, she told me that Mark's mother would be there. My gut reaction was immediate. I don't want to be in the same room as someone who humiliated me, ignored me, and made me feel unwelcome at my own sister's wedding. I told Emily that I didn't think I could attend if her mother was there. Emily was upset. She argued that it's her wedding and she wants her sister there, and she begged me to put aside my feelings for one day. She said that Mark's mother has changed and that she promises it won't be like last time. I tried to explain that trust isn't built overnight and that the trauma of last year is still fresh. She accused me of being petty and letting resentment control me. She said that if I don't attend, I'll be missing a big moment in her life. I thought about it for weeks. Part of me wants to be there for my sister, but another part of me remembers the humiliation, the stress, and how completely my contributions were dismissed. I even offered to attend if we could arrange for Mark's mother not to be involved in the ceremony or to limit her presence. But Emily said that's not possible. I finally told her that I won't attend the wedding if her mother is there. Emily was hurt and said she felt I was choosing a grudge over our relationship. I tried to clarify that I'm not against her getting married. I just can't subject myself to the same environment again. She hasn't spoken to me much since then, and I know that other family members are starting to weigh in, saying I should just get over it and be there for your sister. I feel torn because I love my sister, but I also have to protect my mental health. I know some people might see me as overreacting or letting a grudge ruin a family event, but I genuinely feel that being around her mother would be emotionally harmful. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because her controlling mother will be there? I'm open to hearing honest opinions. AITA for confronting my sister over her parenting choices, even though it caused a huge family rift? This all started about a year ago, but to fully explain, I need to provide some context. My sister, let's call her Jenna, has always been the free-spirited one in the family. I've always been more cautious and structured in my approach to life. We have a younger brother too, but he lives in another state and isn't really involved in the day-to-day dynamics of our household. Jenna has a 6-year-old son, Max, and I have a 5-year-old daughter, Emma. Our families are pretty close geographically, so our kids see each other often and we spend a lot of time together. About a year ago, I started noticing some things about how Jenna was raising Max that really concerned me. At first, it was small things, letting him eat candy for breakfast, rarely enforcing bedtimes, not insisting on schoolwork being done properly. I figured everyone has their own parenting style, and I try to mind my own business. But as time went on, the issues became more serious. Max began displaying behaviors like hitting his peers, refusing to follow instructions from teachers, and yelling excessively whenever he didn't get his way. I tried to be supportive of Jenna when she vented about Max's behavior, but she always shrugged it off or blamed his temperament. The situation escalated last summer. Emma and Max were playing together at a local park, and Max grabbed Emma's toy and refused to give it back. When Emma tried to stand up for herself, he pushed her to the ground. I was furious and immediately pulled Max aside to speak with him, trying to do it gently. Jenna arrived shortly afterward, and instead of acknowledging the incident, she laughed and said, "Boys will be boys. He's just expressive." That was the breaking point for me. I couldn't understand how someone could trivialize aggressive behavior and dismiss it as natural when her child clearly needed guidance. I tried talking to Jenna privately at home. I explained that I was concerned about Max's behavior and the long-term impact it could have on his social skills and school performance. I suggested that maybe she consider consistent rules, timeouts, or even consulting with a child psychologist. Jenna immediately got defensive, insisting that I was judging her and that she knew what was best for her son. I told her that my concern wasn't about judging her, but about wanting both our children to have a safe, healthy environment. She refused to listen and stormed out. After that, our interactions became tense. I tried to be polite during family gatherings, but it was obvious that Jenna was upset. Things came to a head during Thanksgiving. We were all at our parents' house, and the kids were playing in the living room. Max knocked over a small lamp while trying to climb the bookshelf. Jenna shouted at Emma, blaming her for distracting Max, and then yelled at our parents when they scolded him. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I confronted Jenna in front of everyone, telling her that it wasn't fair to place blame on Emma when Max was the one misbehaving. I explained that her inconsistent discipline was causing her son to act out and that if she didn't address it, the consequences could be serious. Jenna exploded. She screamed that I was overstepping, accused me of trying to make her look like a bad mother, and told everyone I was interfering in her family. Our parents tried to mediate, but it didn't help. Jenna left with Max in tears, and the rest of the evening was tense and awkward. After Thanksgiving, Jenna stopped talking to me. Our parents were upset and tried to get us to reconcile, but every attempt ended in more arguments. She accused me of trying to control her parenting and insisted that I had no right to speak about how she raises Max. Meanwhile, I felt stuck. I genuinely care about her and her son, and I was only trying to prevent behavioral problems from escalating. I also felt frustrated because our children spend so much time together, and I didn't want Emma to be negatively affected by Max's unchecked behavior. Things got worse over the next few months. Jenna began posting on social media about how I was an interfering sibling and how she was handling things her way. Some family members took her side, while others were sympathetic to me. Our younger brother stayed out of it, and our parents were caught in the middle, trying not to escalate the tension. I felt guilty because the whole situation had become very public within our family. Despite this, I couldn't just let it go. I tried sending messages apologizing for confronting her in front of everyone, but I also reiterated that my concerns about Max were genuine. Jenna didn't respond. Recently, things reached another tipping point. Max started attending a new school, and Emma's teacher mentioned that Max was struggling to follow instructions and had frequent conflicts with classmates. Emma's teacher said she noticed that Max was particularly rough during group activities and that Emma seemed stressed after interacting with him. I forwarded this information to Jenna, hoping it would help her understand the impact of her parenting choices. Instead, she called me and yelled at me for airing our family's business and said I was trying to make her feel guilty. I tried to stay calm and explain that my only intention was to share observations so she could help Max adjust better. She hung up on me and blocked my number. Our parents have since begged me to apologize again and let it go to repair the family dynamic, but I feel conflicted. On one hand, I understand that confronting her publicly was not ideal and escalated the conflict. On the other hand, I feel like I was trying to prevent long-term issues for both our children and thought it was important to address the behavior before it became normalized. I also don't want to be complicit in ignoring behavior that could lead to serious consequences later in life. I'm now stuck in a limbo where I want to maintain a relationship with Jen and Max, but I also don't want to compromise my values about protecting children from harmful behavior. I've tried being patient, I've tried gentle nudges, and I've tried explaining my reasoning, but nothing seems to work. The tension has created an emotional distance in the family that I don't know how to bridge. So, AITA for confronting my sister over her parenting choices, even though it has caused a massive rift in our family. Or was I justified in trying to protect my child and point out potentially harmful behavior? AITA for refusing to help my sister move after years of feeling taken advantage of? AITA for refusing to help my sister move even though she claims I'm being selfish? A bit of context. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F, who has always been the kind of person who leans on others a lot. Not just for emotional support, but for practical help too. From as far back as I can remember, Emily has had a habit of calling me at the last minute for favors, expecting me to drop everything. When I was in college, she would frequently ask me to cover her shifts at work so she could hang out with friends. I would help because I wanted to, but over time I noticed that she rarely offered help in return. When I struggled with school or needed someone to watch my dog, she was too busy. Fast forward a few years, and I've built a relatively stable life. I have a full-time job, a modest apartment, and I try to maintain a social life. Emily, on the other hand, has had a patchy work history and has moved in and out of different apartments with little planning. About 3 months ago, she told me she had found a new apartment that was much closer to her work, and she needed to move within the next month. At first, I was excited for her because it's a better place and she deserves to live somewhere she feels comfortable. But as soon as she mentioned moving, the conversation turned to me helping her. She assumed I would not only help pack, but also drive a U-Haul and help unload. I have a small SUV, and moving even a few large boxes would require multiple trips. I told her I might be able to help on one day, but I had to see my schedule. She said that wasn't enough and that I was being unreasonable and selfish. I hesitated because our relationship has been strained over the past few years. I realized I had been the go-to person for all her crises and errands, and it always seemed one-sided. Every time I tried to say no, she would guilt me, sometimes even saying things like, "If you were really a good sister, you would help me." That kind of pressure has always made me anxious. I started thinking about all the times she asked for help and never reciprocated, all the times she relied on me financially, emotionally, and logistically without acknowledging the toll it took on me. I decided that this time, I wasn't going to be the default helper. I told her I couldn't commit to helping her move, citing work and prior commitments. She was furious. She immediately started sending messages like, "You've never cared about me if you can't even help me now," and "I can't believe you would let me struggle like this when I've done so much for you." I was shocked because, from my perspective, the so much she's done usually involved me doing the work for her while she stood by or made plans that inconvenienced me. I tried to explain this to her, saying I felt used and exhausted from always being expected to drop everything to help her, but she dismissed my feelings and called me selfish and unloving. Things escalated when she started posting on social media about how I was the worst sister ever and how no one should rely on me. Our mutual friends started asking me what happened, and I tried to stay neutral, but became uncomfortable. My parents also got involved. My mom, who has a long history of favoring Emily in disputes, said I should do the right thing and help your sister. She's family. My dad was slightly more neutral, but still suggested that maybe I could have at least shown some compromise. Since then, Emily has moved without my help. I didn't go to the apartment warming party because I didn't feel comfortable with the way she treated me. I have noticed that several of our mutual friends have started siding with her, saying things like, "Moving is tough. She probably just needed help." This makes me feel frustrated because it feels like no one is considering the history of one-sidedness in our relationship. I have always been there for her when she needed someone to lean on, but my own life seems to matter less to everyone else in comparison. I'm feeling conflicted. On one hand, I know that family is important and helping each other is part of being in a family. On the other hand, I can't keep being the person who is always available at the expense of my own time and mental health. I don't want to be viewed as the villain for finally setting a boundary. My friends who know the full story support me, but it's hard when it feels like the wider social circle sees me as the bad guy. The tension hasn't resolved. Emily has not spoken to me since the move, except to send a brief text thanking me sarcastically for my support. My parents occasionally mention that I should reach out, but I feel like doing so would only reopen the wound and possibly allow her to manipulate me into more one-sided obligations. I'm trying to focus on my own life, but I feel guilty because I've always valued family connections, and this situation has made me question whether I am justified in prioritizing my well-being over helping her. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister move. Given our history and the way she has treated me in the past, I want to stand my ground and maintain my boundaries. But part of me fears I'm being overly harsh and that family expectations are making me seem cold or uncaring. I'm willing to maintain a relationship with her, but I'm not sure if it's possible without her taking advantage of me again. I'm sharing this because I need an honest perspective. Am I being unreasonable for prioritizing my life and saying no, or should I have helped her despite everything? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she insisted I bring my estranged father. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding after she insisted I bring my estranged father, who I haven't spoken to in over a decade. I'm really struggling to figure out if I'm being unreasonable here, and I need some perspective. A bit of background. I, 29F, have a complicated relationship with my family. My parents divorced when I was 12, and since then, my father, 57M, and I have had very minimal contact. The relationship has been toxic and emotionally draining. He was emotionally manipulative when I was younger, and I've had to cut ties for my own mental health. My sister, 33F, and I grew up close despite our parents' issues, and I've always tried to maintain a healthy boundary with my father while supporting her relationship with him. Fast forward to now. My sister got engaged last year to her partner, and the wedding plans have been intense. They're having a destination wedding in Italy, which is understandably a big deal and expensive. I've been excited for her, and I was planning to attend as soon as I found out. A few weeks ago, she called me and dropped a bomb. She's expecting me to bring my father. She said it's important for family unity, and that it would mean a lot to her fiancé's family if all immediate family members were present. She even suggested that I try to make peace with him for the sake of the wedding. I told her I couldn't do that. I explained the history of my relationship with my father and that I had spent years processing the emotional abuse and establishing boundaries. I told her that forcing myself to interact with him would be incredibly stressful and could ruin my experience at her wedding. I also emphasized that my absence wouldn't be a slight against her. I just cannot handle being around him. She didn't take it well. She cried and accused me of putting my feelings above family and holding grudges for no reason. She argued that the wedding is a once-in-a-lifetime event and that it's selfish to let old conflicts ruin this for her. She also reminded me of all the money she's spending to make sure everyone can attend and suggested that if I don't bring my father, I shouldn't come at all. I was shocked. I feel like she's not understanding that my absence of a parent in my life isn't a minor conflict. It's a long-term trauma issue. I offered a compromise. I could attend virtually for part of the ceremony or even come for the reception without him present. She rejected both options. Now, my dilemma is that I really want to be there for my sister, but I also cannot put myself through emotional turmoil just to satisfy her wishes. I've tried explaining this calmly, but she keeps framing it as me being selfish and disruptive. Some of our mutual friends have told me I should try harder to forgive and forget because it's a wedding, but I also feel like that advice dismisses the emotional boundaries I've worked hard to set. The tension has escalated. She sent me a long text today saying she's heartbroken and that she never thought I let the past get in the way of her happiness. She also hinted that not attending would mean I'm choosing him over her, which is false. I haven't spoken to my father in years, and my decision isn't about him. It's about protecting my mental health. I'm feeling guilty because I love my sister and I want to be there for her, but I also don't want to compromise my mental health or put myself in a toxic environment. I've considered attending, but staying in a separate hotel or avoiding him entirely. But I know my father is not the kind of person who respects boundaries, so that plan likely wouldn't work. Some additional context. My mother is supportive of my choice and says that she understands why I feel this way. Our extended family is split. Some agree with me, and others are pressuring me to just go for the sake of the wedding. I also know that this is causing a rift between me and my sister, which makes me feel even worse. I don't want this to become a lifelong wedge between us. But I also know I can't force myself into a situation I've already decided is emotionally unsafe. I'm worried that by refusing to attend under these conditions, I'll be seen as the villain in the family story, and that guilt is really weighing on me. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to attend my sister's destination wedding because I cannot bring my estranged father. I'm struggling to balance my own boundaries with family expectations, and I need honest feedback. AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting choices, even though it may have caused a huge family rift. I've always been the responsible one in my family. I'm 32, married, and work in healthcare, and I've always felt a bit like the black sheep when it comes to speaking up about family matters. My younger sister, Sarah, is 28, single, and has a 6-year-old daughter, Emily. Sarah and I have always had a complicated relationship. There's love, of course, but also tension because she's more impulsive and carefree, while I tend to overthink everything. Our differences have always caused minor arguments, but nothing this serious until recently. A few months ago, I started noticing concerning things about Emily's behavior. Emily is incredibly bright and curious, but she has started showing signs of anxiety, difficulty in social situations, and trouble at school, including repeated tantrums, excessive clinginess, and refusing to participate in group activities. I initially chalked it up to the usual struggles of starting school, but over time, I became increasingly worried. Sarah is unconventional when it comes to parenting. She's always been very free-spirited and believes in letting Emily do whatever she wants. She doesn't enforce strict rules, rarely disciplines her, and often excuses behavior by saying she's just expressing herself or children shouldn't be constrained. While I understand wanting a relaxed parenting style, some things I saw cross a line. Emily's school sent home notes about her hitting other children, refusing to follow instructions, and sometimes wandering off in the playground. Teachers also mentioned that Emily often goes hungry at lunch because she refuses to eat what's served, claiming she only wants snacks or candy. I tried to approach Sarah gently at first. I suggested small changes like introducing more consistent routines, discussing boundaries, or maybe even consulting a child psychologist. Each time, she dismissed my concerns with phrases like, "You're overreacting," or "Emily is fine. She's just creative." I realized she wasn't open to advice, but I couldn't shake the worry. Last month, things escalated. I was babysitting Emily for a few hours because Sarah had an urgent work meeting. During that time, Emily refused to eat anything I offered her except chocolate and cookies. When I tried to set limits, she had a full-blown tantrum, screaming, throwing things, and even hitting me. I calmed her down, explained why her behavior wasn't acceptable, and let her have a small portion of lunch. When Sarah returned, she laughed off the incident, saying, "See, she's fine, just a little dramatic." I was stunned. I finally reached my breaking point the next weekend. Sarah had promised Emily a big birthday party, but I was invited early to help set things up. I arrived to find Emily running around unsupervised, getting into the cake frosting before anyone else had arrived, and playing with decorations dangerously close to the edges of tables. When I tried to intervene, Sarah snapped at me, saying I was ruining her daughter's fun and trying to control everything. That's when I said something I've regretted ever since. I told Sarah that I was genuinely concerned about Emily's well-being and that her parenting was, frankly, irresponsible. I explained that Emily's school issues, her anxiety, and the behavioral problems were consequences of the lack of structure and discipline at home. I even mentioned the possibility of involving Child Protective Services if things didn't improve. I tried to be calm, but I could feel my voice trembling, and I think the intensity of my concern made Sarah feel attacked. The fallout was immediate. Sarah started crying, yelling, and accusing me of being judgmental and trying to take her child away. She left the house and later texted me, saying she never wanted me around Emily again unless I could be supportive, not critical. Our parents are caught in the middle. They told me I was being too harsh and should have approached the situation more gently. On the other hand, a close friend of mine, who is also a parent, told me I did the right thing and that someone had to confront Sarah before things got worse. Since then, I've barely spoken to Sarah. Emily doesn't seem to understand what happened, but she seems anxious around me now, which breaks my heart. I feel guilty because my intention was never to hurt my sister or alienate her from me, but I genuinely feel like Emily might be at risk if nothing changes. I've thought about reaching out to a child psychologist or social worker anonymously to get advice, but I'm scared this would destroy any chance of reconciliation with my sister. I also feel torn because I know families argue and I know some people think that children can thrive even with lenient parenting. But I can't ignore the signs I'm seeing. Emily's anxiety, trouble at school, and impulsive behavior. I feel like I'm stuck between protecting my niece and maintaining my relationship with my sister. So, AITA for confronting my sister so bluntly about her parenting, even though it may have caused this huge family rift. I've been wrestling with this for weeks, and I genuinely don't know if I crossed a line or if I did the right thing by trying to protect a child who may be struggling because of a lack of boundaries. I don't want to be the villain in my family, but I also can't stop worrying about Emily and what might happen if things continue the way they are. I've considered stepping back and letting Sarah figure things out herself, but I fear that waiting could make matters worse. I just wish there were a way to help without being seen as controlling or judgmental. So, AITA for confronting my sister about her parenting, even though it created tension and may have damaged our relationship. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she excluded me from the planning process. My sister, Rachel, and I have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but always competitive in others. We're 7 years apart in age, and while I always tried to support her achievements, she tended to dismiss mine. I'm not someone who holds grudges easily, but over the years, I've learned to step back when she gets too controlling. That said, I never expected her wedding to completely test the limits of our relationship. Rachel got engaged last year to her fiancé, Mark. When she told me, I congratulated her and offered to help in any way I could. I assumed, like many sisters do, that she'd want me involved in some aspect of planning, helping pick dresses, giving input on decorations, maybe even attending dress fittings. I expected at least a few planning meetings or a let's go together moment. Instead, she told me she already had everything arranged and that she didn't want my input because she had a vision and I wouldn't understand it. I tried to be diplomatic and said I respected her vision, but I still felt hurt that she was completely shutting me out. Initially, I thought I could still play a role. I offered to help with small things, maybe coordinate invites, handle RSVPs, or manage a small task during the wedding weekend. She declined politely but firmly. As months went by, she planned everything herself, and I wasn't included in anything from dress shopping to cake tasting. My parents were also frustrated because they kept trying to mediate, but Rachel refused any outside help. Things escalated when she sent out the bridal party invitations. I assumed that, as her sister, I'd at least be a bridesmaid. Instead, she made her closest friends and a cousin her bridal party, but I wasn't included. I was shocked because we had talked about this when she was a teenager, saying she wanted her sister by her side on her big day. I asked her why I wasn't included, and she said she didn't want family drama and that she only wanted people she's been closest to recently in her bridal party. I was upset, but I let it go because I didn't want to cause a scene. However, the final straw came a few weeks ago when she sent me a text asking for my final RSVP. In the message, she also mentioned that she had intentionally excluded me from certain events, like the rehearsal dinner, because she wanted it to be small and intimate with people she actually sees daily. I felt blindsided. I realized that her idea of me being part of her life had changed drastically. It wasn't just that I wasn't in the bridal party. It was that she actively excluded me from the significant moments leading up to her wedding. I tried talking to her on the phone. I told her I felt hurt and that I felt like she didn't want me in her life at all, even on her wedding day. She responded by saying she was stressed, didn't mean to hurt me, and that she loved me but wanted to do things her way. I explained that her way felt like complete exclusion and that it hurt to be treated like a stranger. She became defensive, saying I was overreacting and that I needed to stop taking everything personally. After that conversation, I couldn't shake the feeling of being deliberately left out. I considered going to the wedding anyway, but I felt anxious, unwelcome, and like I'd be intruding on a celebration where I wasn't truly wanted. I also started thinking about what it would mean for my own mental health. I have struggled with anxiety for years, and being in an environment where I felt unwelcome and judged would be extremely stressful. So, a few days ago, I sent Rachel a message declining her wedding invitation. I explained that I couldn't attend because I felt excluded and that being there would be too difficult emotionally. I told her I still loved her and hoped she had a beautiful day, but that I couldn't participate under the circumstances. Her response shocked me. She called me selfish, dramatic, and said that I was punishing her for living her life. She said I didn't understand what it meant to plan a wedding and that I was making everything about myself. She also told our parents that I had refused to be part of her wedding and that I had burned a bridge with her forever. Now, our family is split. My parents understand some of my feelings, but are upset because they want a full family representation at the wedding. Several cousins have reached out to say they think I'm overreacting and that Rachel probably doesn't mean to hurt me. A few close friends have said I'm justified because it's normal to feel hurt when family excludes you from major life events. I don't know if I handled this correctly. I truly wanted to be involved, but I felt completely shut out and unseen. I also feel guilty because my absence will undoubtedly affect Rachel's big day, and I don't want her to feel abandoned. On the other hand, I don't want to force myself into an environment where I feel unwanted and anxious. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding because she excluded me from the planning and certain events, even though she wants me there as a guest. I keep questioning myself because family is important, and this feels like a huge decision with long-term consequences. AITA for refusing to lend my brother money after he lost his job, even though our family thinks I should have helped. So, this is going to be a long one, and I want to give all the context because people in my family seem to think I'm the villain here, but I feel like I'm justified. A little background. I, 29F, have a younger brother, Sam, 25M. We've always had very different approaches to money. I'm very careful, save consistently, and I live within my means. Sam, on the other hand, has always been more free-spirited and tends to spend impulsively. We have a good relationship overall, but money has always been a point of tension. Recently, Sam lost his job. He's been working as a server at a small restaurant, and apparently the restaurant had to cut staff due to a downer in business. He called me a few days after he got the news, very panicked and stressed. He told me he didn't have much saved up and was worried about paying rent and bills. He asked if I could lend him $2,000 so he could get by until he found another job. I was taken aback. I have savings, yes, but I also have my own bills, student loans, and a mortgage. $2,000 is not a small amount, and lending it would make me very tight financially for the next couple of months. I asked him if he had applied for unemployment or looked for other options, but he said the unemployment office has a backlog, and he's not sure what he qualifies for. I told him I couldn't lend him the money. I said I would help him in other ways, like helping him update his resume, connect him with job leads, or even cook meals for him if needed, but I could not give him $2,000. He got very upset, saying I was being selfish and that I don't understand what it's like to be in a tight spot. I tried to explain that I do understand, but that I also have to be responsible for my own finances and that lending him money could compromise my own stability. He said he expected me to help because I make more money and I'm the responsible sibling, implying that my being responsible meant I should help him. The tension came to a head during a family gathering a few days later. My parents, aunt, and cousin were there, and the conversation somehow turned to Sam's situation. My parents said I should have lent him the money. They argued that I make enough that $2,000 is nothing to me and that it would have been the kind thing to do. My aunt chimed in, saying that families should support each other unconditionally. I tried to explain again that I do want to support him, but not in a way that could hurt me financially. I suggested helping him find temporary work, helping with groceries, or anything that wouldn't require me to risk my own stability. My parents and aunt got frustrated and said I'm letting my brother suffer for no reason and prioritizing money over family. Sam got even angrier. He told me that this proves I only care about myself and that I'm not really family. That hurt because I do care deeply, but I feel like my caring has limits when it comes to financial risk. After the family gathering, I haven't spoken to him directly, and he hasn't spoken to me either. Some additional context. Sam has asked for money before, and in the past, I've helped him out with smaller amounts, usually $200 to $300 here and there, and it was always on the understanding that it was a loan he would pay back. Sometimes he didn't pay me back fully, and that caused tension. My parents know about this history, but seem to ignore it when saying I should help now. A week after the family gathering, Sam moved back in with our parents to save money. My parents are helping him with rent and bills now, which is fine, but it still doesn't change the fact that they are upset at me. They've been texting and calling me almost daily, saying that I need to do the right thing and help him, that I owe it to him as his sister, and that I'm too cold-hearted. I feel really stuck. On one hand, I want to help my brother, and I don't want our family to be fractured. On the other hand, I don't think it's responsible for me to lend him such a large sum when he has a history of poor financial management and I have my own obligations. I also feel that my family is being unfairly judgmental. Just because I make more money doesn't mean I should be expected to financially rescue someone who has not shown responsibility with money in the past. I do help him in other ways, but that doesn't seem to satisfy them. To be clear, I am not unwilling to help him at all. I've offered to pay for groceries, drive him to interviews, help him write resumes and cover letters, and even spend time helping him plan a budget. But any suggestion involving a significant transfer of money is immediately met with accusations that I'm selfish or uncaring. So here I am, feeling stressed, guilty, and frustrated. I feel like I'm being forced into a situation where either I risk my own financial security or get labeled the bad sibling for doing the responsible thing. I know $2,000 might not seem like a huge amount to some people, but for me, it would cause real financial strain. I've tried to explain this to my family, but they don't seem to understand or accept it. So, Reddit AITA for refusing to lend my brother $2,000 after he lost his job, even though my family thinks I should have helped. AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she insulted my career. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. I work as a forensic accountant, which isn't glamorous, but it pays the bills and I genuinely enjoy the work. My younger sister, Emily, 28F, on the other hand, has always had a more carefree lifestyle. She's a freelance photographer and often complains about not having a stable income, even though she travels constantly for shoots and spends a lot on non-essential things. Emily recently got engaged to her boyfriend, Mark, 30M. From the moment she announced it, she expected everyone to be involved in the wedding planning, especially me. I've always been good with numbers, budgeting, and organization, so she assumed I would take charge of the logistics, financial planning, and general wedding coordination. Normally, I don't mind helping family, but the way Emily phrased it made it sound like my involvement was an obligation rather than a favor. The first major issue came up when she started talking about the budget. Emily wanted a lavish destination wedding in Italy with a guest list of over 200 people, luxury accommodations, and a fancy catering service. I suggested we look at more affordable options, like a smaller venue or a domestic location, because it would be easier on her budget and less stressful overall. She immediately rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, I forgot, you just sit at a desk all day and crunch numbers. You wouldn't understand how to plan something as creative as my wedding." I was stunned. I had never insulted her career choices, and I thought it was extremely unfair to dismiss my skills just because they are in a more traditional profession. I calmly told her that being practical and detail-oriented is exactly why I could help her make the wedding successful without going bankrupt. She scoffed and said, "I don't need a boring accountant ruining my dream wedding. I'll figure it out myself." I decided to step back, thinking that maybe she just needed space. Over the next few weeks, she kept sending me lists of things she wanted me to handle: guest lists, budgeting, contacting vendors. But every time I tried to offer advice, she brushed me off or made snide remarks about my career. It started to feel less like helping and more like being a punching bag for her frustration about finances and planning stress. A turning point happened when she asked me to help her choose a photographer for the wedding. I suggested a few professionals whose work I had researched and who fit her aesthetic and budget. Emily immediately rejected all my suggestions and said, "You wouldn't get what I want anyway. You're too boring and uptight to understand art." At that point, I finally snapped. I told her I couldn't help her anymore if she was going to insult my career and dismiss everything I brought to the table. She was furious. She accused me of being selfish, saying that I was letting my ego get in the way and that no one else in the family was helping her. I tried to explain that helping doesn't mean being treated disrespectfully and that it's not selfish to protect my own mental health. She started texting me daily, guilt-tripping me with messages like, "I can't believe my own sister would abandon me like this. You're the only one who can help me." Our parents got involved, and their perspective made me feel even more isolated. They told me that family sticks together, especially for events like weddings, and that I should put aside my feelings for Emily's sake. I tried to explain that it wasn't about not caring for her. It was about being treated with respect. My mom said, "You're letting your pride interfere with your duty as a sister. You can't just wash your hands of this." I realized that if I helped under these conditions, I would likely end up resenting her for years. So I told my parents and Emily that I wouldn't be participating in the planning or logistics. I would, of course, attend the wedding, but I was done with being responsible for anything else. Emily responded with a long message calling me vindictive and heartless, saying that I was ruining her wedding dreams. Since then, our relationship has been strained. We barely talk, and family gatherings feel awkward. Some relatives have taken Emily's side, saying that I should have put family first, while a few close friends and extended family members have told me that setting boundaries is valid and necessary. I can't help but feel that my skills and professionalism were being undervalued simply because they don't align with Emily's lifestyle, and that I shouldn't be punished for refusing to be insulted. I still care about my sister, and I want her to have a wonderful wedding, but I also need to protect my own dignity and mental well-being. I'm attending the wedding, but I'm keeping my distance from the planning process entirely. I know some people will say that family obligations should come before personal feelings, but I genuinely feel that respect should come first, and it's hard to participate in anything where my efforts are consistently belittled. So, AITA for refusing to help my sister with her wedding after she insulted my career and disregarded my advice, even though it's causing tension within the family. AITA for ruining my sister's wedding because I refused to stay silent about her fiancé. I, 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 25F. We grew up practically inseparable, sharing bedrooms, secrets, and the usual sisterly drama. Over the past couple of years, I noticed Emily becoming more distant, mostly because she started dating this guy, Jason, 27M. At first, I tried to be welcoming, but there were red flags I couldn't ignore. Jason was controlling, subtly manipulative, and would often make Emily seem inferior in conversations. At first, I thought it was just normal boyfriend behavior, but over time, it became more obvious to me and a few mutual friends. Emily started talking less about her own hobbies and interests, always deferring to Jason's preferences. If she wanted to go out with friends, or even just hang out with family, Jason would remind her of their plans or make comments that made her feel guilty for wanting to do anything else. It wasn't aggressive, but it was constant undermining, the kind that chips away at a person's confidence. I tried bringing it up gently several times, just in casual conversations, suggesting she needed space for herself. Emily would brush it off with a laugh or say I was overreacting, so I backed off, but I kept a wary eye on their relationship. Fast forward to last year. Emily and Jason got engaged. Everyone in the family was excited, but my gut kept yelling at me. Over the months of planning, I noticed that Jason tried to control every little aspect of the wedding. The color palette, the seating arrangements, the music, even the catering choices had to align with what he wanted. Emily seemed nervous, a little stressed, but still insisted she was happy and that I shouldn't worry. I wanted to trust her judgment, so I tried to support her as best as I could. About a month before the wedding, I overheard a conversation between Jason and one of the wedding planners. He was giving instructions that would completely undermine Emily's vision, telling the planner to handle her like a child and make sure she doesn't complain. My stomach sank. I didn't know whether to confront him or Emily, so I waited for a moment when I could speak to Emily alone. When I told her, she looked hurt, almost angry, saying she didn't want to start drama and that she trusted Jason. I told her gently that I was worried about her being manipulated and that the way he spoke about her behind her back wasn't normal. She said I was overreacting again, but her voice quivered slightly. I left it at that because she clearly didn't want to discuss it further. The wedding day arrived. Everything was perfect on the surface. The venue looked stunning, the guests were all smiles, and Emily seemed happy in her dress. But as the ceremony started, I noticed Jason subtly giving her instructions, how to walk, where to look, even when to smile. During the vows, he made a joke about how he finally had her figured out, and I saw Emily flinch. I wanted to say something right then, but we were in front of hundreds of people, so I stayed quiet. After the ceremony, at the reception, the tension became unbearable. Jason kept making passive-aggressive comments to Emily in front of family and friends, micromanaging every interaction. At one point, he told the DJ to skip a song Emily had requested because it doesn't fit the vibe. That was the breaking point for me. I pulled Emily aside and whispered that she didn't have to tolerate this, that she deserved to be happy and respected, even on her wedding day. She said again that I was embarrassing her and that she didn't want a scene. I told her I loved her, but I couldn't stand by silently while he treated her like this. I walked up to Jason in front of about 100 guests and calmly said that his behavior was inappropriate and controlling. I didn't yell or insult him. I just listed the things I had observed, from the wedding planning interference to how he spoke to Emily earlier. Jason laughed it off, saying I was being dramatic and trying to ruin the day. But a few other guests, who had also noticed his behavior, started agreeing with me. The room became awkwardly quiet, and Emily was in tears, telling me to stop. I realized then that I had indeed caused a scene. Afterwards, Emily was furious. She called me selfish and said I had ruined the most important day of her life. She said I didn't trust her judgment and accused me of being jealous of her relationship. Jason, surprisingly, acted like nothing had happened and kept smiling for photos. Our parents were mortified, not because of Jason, but because of the confrontation itself. They said I should have waited, respected Emily's wishes, and handled things privately. In the weeks since the wedding, my relationship with Emily has been strained. She refuses to talk about the wedding or our confrontation. She still posts happy photos with Jason on social media and acts like everything is fine, but I can sense the distance between us. My parents say I did the right thing in principle, but they also say I could have approached it differently. I'm now conflicted. On one hand, I feel like I stood up for my sister and her dignity. On the other, I can't deny that I caused a public scene and may have humiliated her in front of family and friends. My friends are divided too. Some say I was justified and protective, while others say I overstepped and should have stayed quiet until after the wedding. So, AITA for speaking out and confronting my sister's controlling fiancé on her wedding day, even though it upset her and caused a scene. AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she lost her job and became homeless. AITA for this. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Mia, 28F, and we have always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, our parents favored her in many ways, mostly because she was the golden child. I was always the responsible one, the quiet achiever, and Mia was the outgoing, creative, impulsive one. I loved her, but our dynamic always leaned toward me being the caretaker, both emotionally and practically. A few years ago, Mia moved to another city for work and seemed to be doing well. She would visit occasionally, and although I occasionally had to lend her money or give advice, I didn't mind, it felt like part of being a sister. I had my own life, my career as a graphic designer, and my partner, Lucas, 34M, who has been incredibly supportive. We own a modest apartment in a mid-sized city, and although we don't live extravagantly, we have a comfortable life. Recently, Mia called me in a panic. She had been laid off from her job at a marketing firm, and because she had been living paycheck to paycheck, she couldn't pay her rent. Within a week, she was essentially homeless. She asked if she could stay with me until she got back on her feet. At first, I was sympathetic. I tried to think about what it would be like to be in her shoes. But the more I thought about it, the more apprehensive I became. Lucas and I discussed it. He was immediately against it, saying it could be too stressful and might lead to conflict. He reminded me that Mia has a history of being inconsiderate, especially when it comes to living with other people. For example, when she visited before, she often left our apartment messy, borrowed things without asking, and sometimes had a habit of disappearing for days without telling anyone where she was. While I love my sister, I also love my home, my routines, and my peace of mind. I try to offer alternative solutions. I suggested she look for short-term rentals, stay in a hostel, or even check with local charities and housing programs that help people in emergencies. I even offered to help her create a budget and look for jobs in the area. She was not happy with this, of course. She said I was being cold and that family should always help each other. She insisted that it would only be temporary, maybe a month or two, until she found a new job. She claimed she would respect our space and not be a burden. After thinking long and hard, I told her no. I explained that while I wanted to help her, I couldn't sacrifice my mental health and my relationship with Lucas for an indefinite period. I offered to help financially if she needed help covering rent somewhere else or to assist with moving costs for a short-term rental, but I couldn't have her living with us. Mia blew up on me. She accused me of being selfish, heartless, and acting like our parents always did by prioritizing my life over hers. She told me that I would regret this decision and that I was choosing comfort over family. I expected a little anger, but what came next shocked me. She called my mother and cried about how I wouldn't let her stay with me. My mom, who tends to take me aside, told me I was wrong, that I should put my sister first, and that Lucas shouldn't have a say in family matters. I tried to explain my reasoning, but she dismissed my concerns, saying family is supposed to support each other no matter what. My father, surprisingly, didn't say much, but I know he agrees with my mom. Mia has since been staying with a friend who barely has room, and she's constantly texting and calling me, not to update me on her life, but to guilt-trip me. She says things like, "I guess family doesn't matter to you, and I hope you don't get into trouble and need someone to help you someday." Lucas is frustrated, and our apartment feels tense every time my phone rings. Even my friends are divided. Some think I should have let her stay because she's family, while others agree that I have the right to protect my own life and mental health. I feel awful, but I also feel like saying yes would have been a huge mistake. I worry about our relationship forever being damaged, but I also worry about the precedent it would set. Mia has a pattern of expecting people to drop everything for her, and I'm afraid if I give in now, it will only encourage that behavior. I've offered help in other ways, financial support, advice, and even helping her move, but nothing seems to satisfy her because it's not living with me. I can't decide if I'm the asshole here. I want to help her, but I also need to protect my mental health and my relationship. I feel like there should be a line between supporting family and enabling problematic behavior. My sister's friends and extended family seem to think I'm being cruel, but I feel like I'm being practical and responsible. I just don't know if this makes me a bad sister. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay with me after she lost her job and became homeless. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my house after she insulted me over my living situation. I, 32F, have always considered myself a private, low-key person. I live in a modest apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It's not fancy, but it's mine, and I'm proud of the fact that I managed to pay it off with my own hard work. I have a small circle of friends and a few plants that make my place feel homey. My sister, Amanda, 30F, on the other hand, is the polar opposite. She's very materialistic and loves to flaunt wealth. She got married last year to a man from a wealthy family, and their lifestyle is very different from mine. Recently, Amanda got engaged again, this time to someone else, and immediately started planning her wedding. She approached me about it a month ago and asked if I would host the wedding in my apartment. My apartment is about 900 square feet with a small living room, 2 bedrooms, and a kitchen that can barely fit more than 4 people comfortably. I tried to explain that it would be very cramped and suggested other venues, but she insisted. She said she loved my home and thought it would make the wedding more intimate and personal. At first, I thought it was sweet, but then she started making comments about my place. She told me my furniture was outdated, that my walls were so plain, and even made a snide remark about my carpet being old and dingy. She said she didn't want her guests to feel like they were in a cheap apartment, which hurt because I've worked hard to make my space comfortable for myself. I got defensive and said I didn't think it was appropriate for her to insult my home when I was trying to help. She shrugged it off and told me I was being too sensitive. A week later, she sent me a Pinterest board of dream wedding ideas, all of which would require more space and resources than my apartment could offer. She included large floral arrangements, a 20-foot long table for 30 guests, and a dessert table that would take up my entire living room. I told her again that it wouldn't be feasible and suggested renting a hall or even hosting in a friend's backyard. She argued that it wouldn't feel as personal in a rented space and that I was ruining her vision by saying no. I tried reasoning with her, saying I was happy to help in any other way, planning, catering suggestions, or even helping with decorations, but she kept insisting that it had to be at my place. Things escalated when she brought my parents into the argument. My mom, 60F, sided with Amanda, saying that I should compromise for family and that hosting a small wedding was not a big deal. My dad, 62M, was more neutral but said he didn't want me to feel stressed or pressured. Despite this, Amanda kept messaging me, asking if I had considered her offer and implying that I was being selfish. The breaking point came 2 days ago. Amanda visited my apartment unexpectedly, claiming she wanted to measure for the decorations. She immediately started pointing out how my furniture would have to be moved, how the rugs were too thick for her vision, and how my lighting was all wrong. I calmly told her again that my apartment was too small and that I could not host the wedding. She snapped and said, "I can't believe you're being so cheap and petty. Your apartment is a joke, and you're just embarrassed because you can't do it right." She left shortly after, slamming the door. I was in shock because I've never seen her so openly hostile. I texted her saying that I wouldn't host the wedding under any circumstances and that I felt disrespected by her comments. She replied with a message that said I was a bad sister and a bad person for refusing, and that she couldn't believe I would put my pride above family. My parents have been trying to mediate, telling me to apologize for hurting her feelings, but I don't feel like I should apologize for saying no to something that would be logistically impossible and emotionally exhausting for me. Since then, our communication has been tense. Amanda has told several family members that I refuse to help and that I'm selfish, which has made family gatherings awkward. My friends think I'm right to say no, but some distant relatives have called me unreasonable for not accommodating my sister's special day. I want to support Amanda, but I feel like she crossed a line by insulting my home and pressuring me despite knowing my limitations. So, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding at my apartment after she repeatedly insulted my living situation and pressured me. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos also. Leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.